the podcast that brings you unfiltered discussions with nonprofit visionaries. Together we'll uncover practical solutions and inspire connections that elevate your mission. Now here's your host, Shannon Underco.
All right, I am sitting here today with Casey from Erie Arts and Culture. Thanks for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So kind of the basis of this podcast is to create awareness, bring transparency, and like the reality of serving in a nonprofit capacity, right? So you are the first from the arts and culture side, and I think that that's important to kind of diversify the guests that I'm having to talk about experience and then obviously to share in some of the challenges so that we can come up with real solutions to these challenges. So why don't you just introduce us to you quickly, like tell us about your role at EAC.
Sure. Well, I'm Casey Curatori, and I grew up in Erie. I did all of the arts things that you could do in the city, from Junior Phil to the Erie Playhouse and school shows and all of that. And that inspired my career today. And it's so special to go back to my hometown and give what nourished me as a kid.
Sure.
So my role at Erie Arts and Culture is the capacity building lead, which means I'm responsible for connecting artists and arts organizations with resources to help them reach their goals, be it financial through a number of grants or social through networking opportunities and connecting people one-on-one, or access to space, or anything that someone might need to get closer to where they want to be.
Sure.
is my bread and butter.
Yes. So Erie Arts and Culture is kind of unique in a certain sense because, yes, you're in the arts community, but you have a different level of capacity as opposed to some of the other organizations. And if you just talk a little bit about your relationship with the state and how you're leading arts programming in Erie County.
Yeah, so as the Regional Arts Council for 6 counties of northwestern Pennsylvania, we have a really great perspective on what's happening in our region. We have close relationships, of course, in the city of Erie, but then as far as Lawrence County, we have friends doing great work down there. The Arts Council was established in 1960 just to serve a small number of organizations in the city here. Over time, we built a relationship with the Pennsylvania Council on the Arts, and we now administer all 3 of their partner programs. That's grants, arts and education, and a folklore partnership.
So you're like the center resource, right? Would you say? So let's talk about some of the partnerships that you have in town. And I really want to highlight this because the big shtick I have is the importance of collaboration, right? Because as nonprofit entities, we need each other to be able to not only grow but sustain. And we're all not perfect at everything, right? We all have our own separate skill sets that we're strong in certain areas that we can really bring value to one another. So let's talk about the grant-making side of EAC and who you're supporting in those grants, whether it would be nonprofit, individual, however you want to dice that up.
Sure. So we have a number of opportunities for funding through the Arts Council. We have endowment programs that are specifically for individual artists who are chasing creative careers, and arts organizations that are located in Erie County. So that might be music performance, arts education, capacity building. Those programs run every year. And then through our partnership with the state, they're really focused on creative entrepreneurship. So really expanding the idea of what the creative industries are beyond what we would think of, music, visual arts, et cetera, to encompass marketing and architecture, publishing, advertising, all of that, all of those industries that require a creative skill set, but previously didn't have support under the arts umbrella. So our partnership with the state really enables us to create opportunities for people to be entrepreneurs in our region, and use their passions as a vehicle for a healthy and sustainable life here.
Yeah. So you're going to have to forgive me because I'm super naive. I couldn't draw a circle if my life depended on it. But I can talk to the challenges of being an entrepreneur and starting your own business. So let's just look at that. As a young creative entrepreneur in Erie County, How do you get started?
Okay, great question. A lot of the young creatives in our area maybe have never applied for support before or don't know that it exists. So reaching out to the Arts Council and saying, hey, this is who I am and what I'm trying to do is the first step. I think, that's what I did very early in my career, was just cold email and say, here's what I'm doing. How can we figure out how to get me closer to where I want to be?
Sure.
So because I've received so much support in that way, that's how I conduct my work through the Arts Council. I love having one-on-one conversations with artists and hearing what it is that they want to do, what they've done to get themselves closer, and how we can connect the dots. If you have a big, audacious goal, I think my strong suit is breaking that goal down into actionable steps and connecting you to the right people, funding mechanisms, etc., to get there.
Well, in maintaining these folks, whether it would be on a creative side or just any young person that's looking to start a business in Erie, it's so critical for us to thrive and be able to grow. But I'm curious to know the opportunities, because I would imagine, we're sitting in Radius today and we're creating this podcast, which is a co-working space of young professionals that are able to network support here under, in one building. I would imagine the experience for a young creative would be very different. So they come to you, and then what?
And then say they want to be more of a gallery artist. Well, let's conduct a really casual introduction to some of our friends at 1020 Collective or Glass Growers or any of the other galleries that are in town and say, hey, what does it look like for a new artist to be in your rotation? And we all learn together. I'm fairly new in my career, so it's sort of like hey, let's hold hands and figure this out as a team.
Yeah.
When opportunities arise, as they often do, either through the city or through the state or beyond, those interpersonal relationships with artists and the people that we serve are paramount, because then I know, oh, this person's looking to pursue this opportunity, let me forward it off to them. So oftentimes, the resource that we offer as an arts council may be limited, especially if you've already activated them before, but it's access to our network of opportunities on a national scale that I think really is a value add. Once you've done what you can do here, let's move you to the next level.
Well, and for anyone that's listening that may not be aware of all the opportunities that would be available, like you were talking about the different galleries in town, how creative friendly is Erie, would you say?
I think Erie is pretty creative friendly.
Okay.
I think that there is a lot more that we can do to support the creative sector here. The creative sector represents a significant portion of the workforce in PA and in the nation. And if Erie wants to keep up with the other cities that are around us, I think it would build arts and culture into its budget for sustained funding. I think we would also have some sort of a percentage for art program, meaning that whenever there's new development happening, a percentage goes towards public art and paying artists for their time and their talents. Or our friends in Cuyahoga County have a cigarette tax, and a small portion of every pack of cigarettes sold goes directly to arts and culture. And Cleveland has had a thriving creative scene for the last 10, 15 years, possibly as a result of that increased funding and support.
Okay. So it sounds like it could be friendlier.
It could be friendlier. I think our organization has done a great job of working with what we have. A lot of arts organizations operate on a shoestring, so we get pretty crafty.
Sure.
I think that's maybe a nonprofit reality.
Yeah.
But through, for example, 2 summers ago, we had a Vieux festival, and it was 25 murals in 2 weeks. And we brought in local artists who have years of experience leading murals, but then also national and international artists to lead this program. And we paired them with emerging artists who've never done large-scale work before. I mean, it's pretty intimidating.
100.
And it's totally different than painting in the studio on a canvas or on a wood panel. So we connected these emerging artists with professionals to learn on the job what it looks like to be a public artist. And everyone was paid so handsomely. It was a wonderful opportunity to show, like, there is talent here that we can cultivate. And the impact of that is incredible. We had done murals for a number of years prior to the big festival, and assistants from years before were then acting as lead muralists for the Vieux Fest, which is just so exciting.
Yeah.
And so many of them are my age and have similar stories as me, you know, like, we're back in our hometowns, what can we do?
Sure.
Well, we can learn, we can get involved and create work that resonates with the people who engage with it every single day.
Well, and I'm curious your opinion, because I think sometimes arts and culture is overlooked when it comes to its impact on economic development. Like, sometimes I think that we're so laser focused on making a building look pretty or bringing in restaurants and various activities that sometimes we negate just how hungry people are for the arts. What are your thoughts?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. When someone comes to your new restaurant, what are they going to do after? What are they going to do before? Are they just going to go home? Are they going to go to a bar? They could.
Sure.
But the reason why I travel is to engage in meaningful arts experiences through the theater, through a concert, I went to an improv show over the weekend in Cleveland. Like, that's why I travel, and that's why so many people do. And when I go to see that show, if it's $15 or $100, that's not all I'm spending.
Sure.
I'm eating at restaurants. I have an Airbnb or a hotel. I'm taking Ubers and public transit. Like, there is so much, like, indirect spending related to the arts that it's almost unquantifiable.
Sure.
I think I read the Americans for the Arts published a survey not so long ago, and I think they said it was a range between $30 and $60 in addition to ticket prices that people will spend on average nationally on a night out. I know I've spent more.
100%.
And I think Erie has enough talent and enough auxiliary experiences to really up its nightlife and its creative scene.
Yeah.
State Street, you know, it's walkable. Did you guys know that? It's
Yeah,
walkable.
totally.
And you will see so many theaters and creative spaces if you walk 10 blocks. It's amazing. The EDDC this summer is doing 3 boutique nights, and I think they've done this before, where they activate the streets and they bring artists and vendors outside, and people can come and play and peruse, and it's lively and there's music. Like, that's the activation that we're looking for, and not just for folks who live in the city of Erie, but also those in the surrounding areas. I feel like there is such a big barrier for our friends who are in Mill Creek or Harbor Creek or Fairview. They don't feel that the city is for them.
Okay. Yes. Because, and I will say this, it's funny, like, I recently moved into the city, and we talk about Erie like it's this ginormous space, right? So, like, talking about coming downtown when I lived in Fairview, it was like I needed to pack a snack. You know what I mean? Like, it felt like so far. Because it's such an Erie mentality, right?
Sure.
If it's more than 10 minutes, like, I'm not going. And I think because of all of the changes that have occurred downtown, especially in having this focus over the last, 10 years, it is a very, very different scene right now. So I'm curious your thoughts, like, how do we make Erie a destination for arts? What do we need to do?
Oh my
Tell me all the
God.
things.
Okay, so how do we make Erie a destination for the arts? Where do we begin? Okay. Erie's greatest asset is its waterfront.
Yeah, no shit.
Yeah, we know this, but we neglect to really use it. So many waterfront cities activate arts and culture experiences on the water. It's so special. There is a floating circus called the Flotsam floating circus, and they anchor themselves in the water, and they're on a ship, and they do all of these crazy things. There are cities that have theaters on the water where, you can watch a performance floating right in front of you, or movies, or an art boat parade. I don't know, like, we could do so much here that is not just for local residents, but also has a regional draw, right? So we can bring those tourists in, and also it's cross-sector activating the waterfront, because we have folks who are into sports and sailing and just being at the beach, and who also have an interest in creativity.
Sure.
And we all want to be entertained.
Yeah.
I think that is a really easy and low barrier way to position Erie differently. I think we have this Rust Belt mentality that Erie is a what was city, but we're here and we're doing great things, and our people are energized and ready to make a difference. I think in this city, as from what I've seen, I've lived in many different places over the years, is that when you have an idea here, you're maybe one of very few people who have that idea, and you can activate it and you can run with it. There is support for you as an entrepreneur, as an artist, as a creative, etc.
So I agree with you. I think my fear is that young entrepreneurs, regardless of what their sector is, there is a fear that you can't make it here, right? Because there's this mentality of maybe failure, or thinking that you have to relocate in order to be successful because there's additional resources. And I truly believe it's just a lack of education of not knowing what resources are available. So like you were talking about, like, we have this tremendous asset that is how many tourists do we attract every year that come to Presque Isle? So we have this tremendous asset, and then we have these built-in organizations that are funded, and they're waiting to help you and to support you. So like, and I'm curious to your thoughts, is how do we bring these people back to Erie? Like, whether it was an artist that left or whether we're looking to attract. And I'm asking this because from a economic development standpoint, we're trying to figure out how do we attract new businesses to Erie, new restaurants, whatever it may be. Like, how do we sell that?
Okay. There is such thing as an artist relocation program, and they exist all over the U.S., but there is one just an hour away in Oil City. And that, since activating that program, they've seen creatives from all over the nation come and live in Little Oil City and do great work there. And now they went from being an oil town to being a creative hub for the region. So artist relocation programs that provide an incentive, a moving incentive, maybe in Oil City, they have really old housing stock, but it's all very beautiful. And, artists love to make things their own. So it's an opportunity to create a space that is uniquely yours. Yeah. And they also have some sort of an ordinance that allows you to live and work in your space.
Nice.
So you don't need an outside studio in order to be paid for your work.
So I love this because now you're minimizing your overhead, and then, oh, by the way, our cost of living is significantly lower than if you were to move to a Chicago or to New York and you're struggling to pay your rent.
Yeah, we have amazing artists. CJ Hurley is a visual artist from Seattle who moved here a number of years ago to be closer to his family. Sure. And he and his wife, Barbara Pierce, are real anchors of that community. They're so involved, not just in creating their own work, but also in organizing artists and making sure that there is continued support beyond just the relocation. Rafi and Clay are other artist friends that came up, I think, from Sarasota, Florida. And they have a national presence. And so, there is such great talent here that it builds the narrative that northwestern PA is a place where creativity thrives. And you can really get behind it when you look a little bit deeper than surface level. We have so many great legacy institutions here, but what I'm most excited by is the grassroots efforts and the individuals and what dreams they're chasing. Because in the last 5 years, so many people have come from all corners of the world back home. And we take these experiences that nourished us and helped us grow and inspired us to be better creatives, and we can do that here too. And I think what's challenging is that it's a strategic marketing issue, because as someone who shows up to as many events as I possibly can in our creative sector here, I see all of the same people, and I love them.
Yeah.
And we have very deep and fulfilling relationships, but the same 300 people can't do everything all the time. So what does it look like to meaningfully engage people in those outside districts that are part of Erie?
Sure.
We need them.
Yeah.
And they have families that want to go out and do fun things and could really benefit from the excitement happening downtown. So I would love to see some, I'm not going to say that Erie Arts and Culture will be this yet, but I would love to see some sort of like group resource hub where there can be shared marketing, shared space, so that we can do what we do best, which is our programming.
Yeah. And part, I think, of engaging maybe folks that are outside of the city is figuring out a way to meet in the middle, right? So another space that I can think of that's so great is Frontier Park, right? Gorgeous space. I think super underutilized. I know they introduced like the market days last summer, which were fantastic. But I'm thinking like maybe if we start kind of meeting in the middle and bringing the art to folks more consistently, like closer to that Pittsburgh Avenue where it becomes the city,
Right.
that folks in the outer territories might feel a little bit more comfortable. But I also think it's a matter of people don't know. I mean, there's so much going on in Erie that is fantastic that people don't even know about.
Yeah, it's a messaging thing.
It is.
And when our slogan is "It's okay to love Erie," it doesn't really inspire you to dig much deeper.
No. And I think it comes down to an appreciation thing. And going back to talking about, Lake Erie, for example, I would challenge anyone to talk to someone on the street that lives in Erie and ask them how often they go to Presque Isle. Because it's just, talk about underutilized. It's like when you're here, you're just so used to either driving by it or not recognizing the importance, right? And
Yeah,
the
when
beauty
you
of
could
what's
go,
around you.
when you can go anytime, you don't really go. And then when people, this goes for any city. You leave a city, you're like, oh, I can't believe I never did that.
Right.
So yeah, activate what's in front of you. A staycation is healthy. Follow your curiosity. What do you like to do when you go to other cities? You can do that here.
Totally. And maybe it's not on this massive scale, but I think there's something so great about intimacy, right? And having a smaller space and being able to really foster those relationships.
Yeah, and if you want to be involved, it really is just showing up.
Yeah.
People notice.
Half the battle, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly. It makes
Yeah.
a difference.
Yeah.
It really does. So we were talking about bringing the arts to people. And I think the example of last year's solar eclipse in Frontier Park, where they played they played Dark Side of the Moon for everyone, and it was just like this awesome communal experience. They made the stage. It was awesome. I think that something that is a challenge that could be turned into an opportunity is those more transient arts experiences. We've seen, even in this building, arts organizations that have been displaced, or creatives who don't have a home anymore. So what does it look like to downscale your work and do it on the road? For so long, that's what theater was.
Yeah.
And, telling stories to people who maybe weren't suspecting it. And I think lots of people feel surprise and excitement when they encounter something creative in a location that they wouldn't expect. And that spark is what draws people in.
Well, and ultimately, that's what we all thrive on as humans, right? Is connection. And what a better way to do it than through art, and thinking of just all the different variations of how that could look. And when it comes to EAC and working with young artists and fostering young artists, I know financially that can be a huge struggle, right? How are we working to maintain fair wages? Because we talked about the mural project, and that was a beautiful experience, right? How are we advocating for somebody that has this creative dream and wants to? Because like any other role that you play or any other job, you are all in. It is a full-time commitment. How are we helping, or how can we help them?
Sure. The first step is to pay artists. Don't ask them to donate their time. And if you have, we've seen a lot of requests for public art over the last couple of years, which is awesome. Don't ask artists to draft up a completely original idea in the application phase, because that's unpaid work.
Sure.
Right? You don't get paid to do that idea because you might not be the one selected. The most equitable thing to do is to ask someone to submit their portfolio. You can get a good idea of their style and how they work based on what they've done in the past, and an interview like this. That, I think, is something that people who are outside of the arts looking to activate artists can do better. Is, okay, how do we make this request process as simple as possible?
Sure.
To speak outside of the arts, like, we've all been hunting for jobs and done projects for, an employer that didn't work out, and now that work is out in the ether, and I got what for it?
Well, and I think you bring up a good point. So for somebody who has an established portfolio, or somebody who has partnered with other organizations in the past, not to say that it's easy, it's just a little bit easier. What about young emerging artists that maybe don't have that portfolio, or they don't have that seal of approval to be able to say, I did a project for XYZ company? Yeah.
It's tough.
It is tough.
It's tough to be emerging in your career. And that is when practice comes in, right? You have to have a personal creative practice that keeps you going. Because if you only create if there's an opportunity, you're not going to be creating very often, and you're probably not going to be as happy with your output. Sure. So really make sure that you have your own rhythm going of a creative practice. And I think to get those very first opportunities, it's showing up in spaces, introducing yourself to people and saying, this is what I want to do. When I came back to Erie, I played the cello. I came back and I said, I'm not really interested in doing the classical music thing anymore. I want to learn how to improvise, and I want to work outside of that genre. And I kept saying it over and over and over and over in all of these spaces. And people started saying, hey, did you do that? How's that going? And I was like, oh, crap. I got to do this now.
Yeah.
I got to do this now.
That accountability
It was accountability,
piece. Yeah.
Yes. And, just by speaking what I wanted, when an opportunity arose and someone heard about it, they thought of me. So it's kind of a personal messaging thing, too. Like, what do you want to do? Do you want to learn from a mentor? Well, you got to meet them.
Sure.
Do you want to engage with galleries? Well, you got to show up at their events and introduce yourself.
Yeah.
And to have something to show, like, I've been working hard.
Yeah.
And we could learn from each other.
It just makes me think, and I hate to put anyone in a box per se, but I'm wondering for artists how easy that is. Meaning, if you are a creative type, how easy is it to get out into the market in Erie and be able to introduce yourself and have the opportunities to showcase your work? Is that
Well, okay. Physically, there are many opportunities for that.
Yeah.
Emotionally, that's a whole nother thing.
Sure.
I think our creatives, and as a creative, I can speak to this personally, there's a lot of imposter syndrome when it comes to saying, I am this, right?
I think that's for anyone, right? And certainly as you look at personality types and someone that maybe is a little bit more introverted, it becomes increasingly more challenging.
For sure.
I just wonder, do those folks that have this talent and maybe not the human skill set or the gumption, I guess, to be able to put themselves out there and be vulnerable, is there opportunities in Erie to get coached on that, to be able to kind of foster making connections and getting comfortable with how you do your elevator pitch, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's where the creative entrepreneurship, sort of overlays artistic talent. Is how do you talk about yourself and your work?
Mm-hmm.
So Erie Arts and Culture has a professional development series called Working Artist 101, where we cover all of the basics from time management, goal setting, record keeping, marketing, talking about yourself.
Yeah.
And that helps people really gain confidence when it comes to promoting, selling, and being the face behind their work. From there, we invite people to participate in other accelerator programs. Erie is flush with them, but the challenges that artists face are unique. So how do we combat those at the very beginning and set any nerves aside so that you can enter other more conventional entrepreneurial spaces with confidence?
Of course, because I think that it's twofold, right? Like you can be incredibly talented, but the people piece of it is huge, right?
It's challenging.
Being able to find the right resources to support you while you are making that name for yourself is difficult. And I know, I mean, EAC is a fantastic organization, but ultimately there's only so many resources to go around, right? Whether that's financial or time, meaning individuals that are coming in and mentoring young talent. So it's just tough, right? And you have to look at it as a business, right?
For sure.
It is, you were operating as a business. So I love to hear that. I know you guys, meet everyone from A to Z, like you're just doing the full gamut of services. And for a smaller organization, that is impressive.
Thank you.
So I always like to ask, like anyone that comes on to the podcast, like you do so much for Erie, and Erie is, whether we show it all the time or not, very grateful. So thank you on behalf of Erie. But I'm just curious, like how can the community support you?
That's such a good question.
Well, I will state the obvious, and then you can come up with something that's probably more PC than what I'm going to say. So I think financially, that's always critical, right? Is because for us to grow as a community, we have to be willing to invest in the community, and the arts are clearly such an important part of that. So are folks able to donate on your website? Like, how do they get money to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, our website is the best way to do it. There's a donate page there. You can donate through Apple Pay or your card, or we take checks.
I love it.
You can mail it to us, 419 State Street.
Send a check, friends. Send a check. And the other piece is, too, because I think this is important, and it's been coming up when I'm having conversations with others about how can we support, because we have those young people that are just starting out and they don't necessarily have the financial resources to be able to help. How can somebody, is it volunteering? What does that look like to be able to support you guys?
Yeah, I think supporting us is supporting the sector. So when you are going to an exciting event, invite a group of friends to go. Like, it doesn't have to be a solo thing. And maybe those friends don't typically engage with the arts, or they're from out of town. Like, really encourage people to come and see what it's all about. And by extension, Facebook is really big in our community, especially for artistic events. So even just indicated that you're interested in going to an event blasts it to your feed and everyone who follows you. So that is like a really simple tool for helping promote the arts. All you have to do is click a button.
Yeah, just create a little visibility there.
Yeah, that's everything. And what else would be helpful is if you have an opportunity for an artist and you're not sure how to go about activating them, come to us. We've done so many iterations of, having a teaching artist come into a school and teach kids, doing murals, doing sculptures. Like, we can guide that if there's any uncertainty at all.
Awesome. Yeah. So having the resources for people that are new or looking to scale, sounds like.
And another thing that would be really helpful is if you are in an adjacent sector, like economic development or finance, like, join our board. We would love to have your perspective as we look to grow our services throughout the 6-county region that we serve. If you are looking for that really meaningful meaningful way to grow the community that you live in, that's one.
Yeah, and I think that there's so much success that comes from working together, and it doesn't necessarily have to be similar skill sets. I think the more diversity we can bring, the better off, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on today. We look forward to boutique nights, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many artists will you have showcased there? Do you know?
As many as we can.
Love it. All right. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.